So Matt, you're feeling rather tired today. Why is that?
Yeah, it's a busy week. It's Black Friday, straight into a new release this Friday. No, sorry, new release this afternoon, and then a big collaboration which we've been teasing but we haven't officially announced, which is coming on December 15th. So basically, it is non-stop at the moment, and then adding in, jiu-jitsu and everything around it. So yeah, I'm I'm feeling it today, but all good. How about you?
I woke up feeling like I'd been run over. I only trained once this week so far. Actually, I've been kind of busy too. So I went to the gym last night to roll, and it was a great session. It was a really good session, but it was a tough session. And I think I rolled with
Boxing?
two black belts. Yeah, boxing. Yeah, right. This is actually a week old. This black eye, but it was just a little love tap. It just caught me right on the. Actually, the knee went right into my eyeball, which was a good one, and it kind of like
Nice.
caught the orbital bone as well, and it blew up. But yeah, it just looks really ridiculous now. This lovely shiner. But
Fine.
no, last night was a good session. Like I rolled with two black belts, purple belt, blue belt, and a white belt, and I just woke up feeling like I'd been absolutely run over,
Were
and
they
it
hard
just made me
rounds
think.
or?
Yes, they were hard
Mm.
rounds. And it just made me think about what we were talking about last week with Imanari being 49 years of age and just, rolling with everybody and how long you can keep going in this game. But yeah, I'm 46 and I'm thinking, screw it. I'm just going to keep going until the wheels fall off. I think that's the only way to do it, right?
That is the only way to do it. Yes, you are correct.
But one thing that I did manage to do over this last week while I wasn't training was I managed to sit down and watch some good movies and good TV. And that is kind of the theme of today's episode because we've been wanting to do this for a little while, talking about jiu-jitsu and MMA media, I guess, because there isn't a lot of jiu-jitsu media in terms of like movies and actual narrative stories.
Hmm.
But there's quite a lot of MMA movies, and a big one that came out this year that a lot of people were talking about was The Smashing Machine, which is the kind of the life story of Mark Kerr, the UFC and Pride champion from the late 90s, early 2000s. And we both watched the movie, and it was interesting to me. It was a really cool movie, I felt. And I've seen mixed reports, and I've spoken to some people, and they're like, they liked it, they didn't like it. I'm just going to give a few thoughts about it before we kind of jump in. But for those of you who haven't seen it yet, The Smash Machine came out this year, and the title is the same as the documentary that came out way back. I think it was in like 2002 or something like that. And basically, the life and times of Mark Kerr sort of focused very specifically on a 3 or 4 year period in the late 90s, early 2000s when he was kind of at his peak. And it's in terms of MMA, I mean, it's a pretty big movie. You've directed by Benny Safdie, who did some awesome movies like Good Times, and is also an actor who's appeared in Oppenheimer and things like that. And he was starring The Rock and Emily Blunt, which are two really, really big Hollywood A-listers. And it had some appearances by loads of really notable faces, like Bas Rutten is in there playing himself, but acting really well. Ryan Bader is in there. Alexander Usyk, the Ukrainian heavyweight boxer, Stephen Quadros, and then cameos from guys like Satoshi Ishii, Olympic judo gold medalist, MMA fighter, Roberto Cyborg, who kind of were playing like real life fighters like Enson Inoue and Fabio Gurgel. So it's not really a film about fighting. And I think this is kind of the important thing to kick off here because a lot of people thought, oh, great, we've got a new MMA movie. It's not. It's more a movie about a fighter rather than an actual fighting movie. And it's a very emotional movie. And it's kind of interesting for me because I was watching it hoping to see some really cool fight sequences and some great MMA action considering who was in it. And there was some okay sequences, but that really wasn't the focus. The focus was much more about the kind of the relationship between Mark Kerr and his then wife Dawn, and it was much more of an emotional drama about their relationship, which my wife really, really loved. Like she really enjoyed the emotional aspect of the movie and really kind of tuned out during the fight sequences. The action sequences didn't really capture her attention very much. But I mean, it was great acting from The Rock and Emily Blunt. I mean, The Rock, definitely, you've never seen him act like this in any movie he's ever been in before. And I felt like it did a good job of capturing the vibe of that sort of late 90s, early 2000s MMA kind of world, for those of us who remember it first time around. But it was an interesting movie, and I did enjoy it. But what were your thoughts on it?
So I didn't get to watch the whole thing, unfortunately, because it's just been such a hectic week. But just before I watched the first like 20 minutes or something. But I was thinking, you're saying that you wanted to see the fight scenes and things like that. I bet once you saw them, or when you saw them, you would probably change your mind, because I'm thinking about all the classic martial arts movies, like boxing movies like Rocky and Raging Bull, Karate Kid, stuff like that. The actual fight scenes are terrible. Like when you see them happening, you're like, oh my God, this is so bad. Especially when you're really familiar with the sport. I think they would have struggled to satisfy, like a real kind of fan of the sport. But yeah, I watched a bit. I don't know. I feel like I need to watch the whole thing to have an opinion on it, obviously. But I have to say I wasn't super impressed with The Rock in the first 20 minutes. But I think it might just take me some getting used to see him like in the role and acting as that guy. And I guess acting in general, because he doesn't normally do that. So, but when it was first announced, I was really excited about it, and I wanted to go to the cinema, but I didn't get round to it. And then, yeah, so I was gutted I didn't get to see it at the cinema. But yeah, I'll watch it, and I'll let you know after I've seen the whole thing.
Well, it got a really limited release as well. It didn't really, I couldn't even see it in the cinemas here. It was just almost impossible to find. It was the first time that The Rock was playing somebody other than himself in a movie, because The Rock is one of those actors where he basically always plays the same character in every movie, and it's just an iteration of himself. Yeah. I think there are some actors who just do that, right? Like Will Smith is always Will Smith in every movie he's in. Jason Statham is always Jason Statham in every movie he's in, and The Rock is the same. So it was nice to see The Rock actually acting, and I thought he did a great job of showing the kind of the sort of the vulnerability of Mark Kerr, this immensely powerful athlete, but
very
quite
soft-spoken,
emotionally fragile. Yeah, really was. I thought it was interesting because the movie lifted some scenes directly from the documentary, which was actually really, really cool. Because for those of you who have seen the original documentary, which is fantastic, and you definitely need to check it out if you haven't seen it, there were a couple of very particular scenes that I remember vividly, such as when Mark Kerr was asking the doctor in Japan for stronger pain medication and refused because he didn't have a prescription. Of course, he was, struggling with an opiate addiction, and the doctor would only offer him aspirin, and he was quite annoyed when he couldn't get anything stronger.
It's classic Japanese red tape.
Oh yeah, there was a great scene about Mark Kerr and Mark Coleman kind of leaving the arena. Sort of, they were backstage, and Kerr turns to Coleman, and he actually says, "Do you want to have some fun?" And they walk outside the arena and out through the loading bay to kind of meet the Japanese fans who are all there behind the barriers that are waiting for them. They go out and sign autographs and stuff. And again, that was lifted directly from the documentary. So there were a couple of nice moments in there. I thought it was really cool.
It makes me want to go back and watch the real documentary, actually, because I feel like there was a little spate of like decent documentaries in the early days of MMA and even jiu-jitsu that were perhaps ahead of their time. They would have been released to a very small kind of hardcore audience that might be good to go back and review now. Like Smashing Machine, yeah. I'd love to go back and watch that. Yeah,
I feel the same. I really feel the same, actually. Like I kind of almost want to rewatch the original documentary to kind of connect it to the movie. And speaking about the documentaries, we'll talk about those in a minute. But just a couple of other things to wrap up on the Smashing Machine. I thought it was really cool to see like Bas Rutten in the movie, and I thought it was also really cool to see those cameos from the fighters that we actually know, like Satoshi Ishii and guys like that. It was really.
Did
cool
Ishii play Ensign Inoue in that?
Yes, and he was literally just a kind of a background figure. It wasn't a speaking role.
Right.
Barely saw him any action. He was just kind of among the lineups. But one thing I wanted to mention actually was about that. I was really lucky that I got to meet Mark Kerr in 2024 at ADCC, and man, what a nice guy. That's something that I just share really quickly as my story of meeting Kerr, because I was in the VIP section for ADCC 2024, and he was kind of just floating around, and I was like, oh man, this is my chance to meet a legend, So I went up and I just said hi and introduced myself and said I was a fan, and wow, I ended up talking to him for like 30 minutes. Like I couldn't get away from him. What a lovely guy. He was just really chatty, super down to earth, really, really nice guy, and ended up giving me his phone number and like texted me and stuff afterwards as well. I was just like, wow, this is really before I kind of knew about the movie coming out as well. I had, so no desire to go up and bug him or anything, but he just,
can you remember what you guys were talking about, or was it just like shooting the shit?
A lot of shooting the shit and actually talking a lot about how to ADCC and jiu-jitsu and grappling had evolved so much, because people forget that Kerr was an ADCC champion, an absolute champion and super fight champion in the late 90s. And he's kind of like really been forgotten from the ADCC sort of the annals of history, because just it was so long ago. And I think maybe this was his first time coming back to ADCC in probably like 25 years. And, the difference of him competing in what in effect was like almost a semi-private tournament in Abu Dhabi back in the day to being in the T-Mobile Arena. We're just talking about the evolution of that, and he was really happy to see that. So it's really cool.
Nice. I found those guys that have, either are abusing or have abused in the past massive amounts of steroids are either the sweetest, softest guys ever, or like maniacs. There doesn't seem to be an in-between.
Yeah, I agree, actually. That's absolutely true. Talking about media in general, jiu-jitsu hasn't really ever had like a kind of a proper Hollywood movie, where MMA has, right? MMA has had a bunch. And I went through kind of some lists earlier just to kind of refresh my memory. And there was some notable movies of the last like 10, 15 years as MMA became more popular. We had some good ones and some really not so good ones. And there were some good ones, like I remember the Warrior movie with Tom Hardy, Joel Edgerton, and Nick Nolte. That was from 2011. That was a great movie. I actually really enjoyed that one, with some legit, like decent fight sequences in it as well. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you had things like Never Back Down and all its sequels, which were not good, right?
I've scrubbed that from my memory. I think I don't even know. I almost like stubbornly avoided MMA movies. I don't know why, because I don't know. I did hear good things about Warrior. Never ended up watching it, which is quite embarrassing. I think even when I met Tom Hardy, I think he mentioned it, and I was like, yeah, it's a great movie. Don't ask me anything about it.
It is actually a really good movie. I would recommend it.
Yeah. No, I should probably go back and watch that. But yeah, you're right. It's weird. Like boxing seems to be the only one that really has brought with it a high caliber of filmmaking. All the others. I mean, Karate Kid is great, but when you go back and rewatch it, it's very goofy. But it's more a story about a kid starting a new life in another town, and overcoming bullies and stuff, rather than a karate story. But it's very, very hinged on karate. But you're right, we haven't, MMA or jiu-jitsu hasn't yet had that kind of defining bit of media.
No, you're right. Boxing has some iconic movies, like you mentioned, obviously the Rocky series, Raging Bull, many others. You've got in the MMA world, you've got some, the Warrior and the Never Back Down. You've got things like Bruised, which is the movie that came out with Halle Berry a couple of years ago. There was a decent TV show a couple of years ago, actually. It ran from 2014 to 2017 called Kingdom with Frank Grillo. That was really good. That was a decent TV show about sort of a family drama set inside an MMA gym in Los Angeles. That was pretty cool. But there hasn't been...
By.
Missed that one? Oh, check it out. It's not bad. At least I watched like the first season, and it was pretty cool. But I do wonder why there aren't any like real jiu-jitsu movies. And I guess there are a couple. Like there was the movie that came out in 2008 called Red Belt, and it was actually written and directed by David Mamet. And maybe only film nerds would know who he is, but I mean, he's the guy who wrote the famous movie Glengarry Glen Ross. The iconic movie about the real estate salesman always be closing and coffee is for closers, right?
Yeah.
And the Red Belt actually had some like real actors in it as well. It had like Chiwetel Ejiofor, Tim Allen, Alice Braga. It featured Randy Couture, Ensign Inoue. It had some like legit people in it.
Was Hickson
but it wasn't
not
a great
in that?
movie.
I can't remember.
Hickson had a cameo in one of the Incredible Hulk movies.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
He was like a martial arts master. But the Red Belt movie wasn't really a jiu-jitsu movie. It had a lot of jiu-jitsu in it, but it wasn't a jiu-jitsu movie. It was just a stereotypical martial arts underground fighting league sort of kind of movie.
Yeah.
Kit Dale is working on a movie. It has been for quite some time, called White Belt. It's been filmed. I think it's still in production. I don't think it has a distributor yet. I know that they still kind of like getting like music licensing and doing some post-production on it and stuff. But my understanding is that Kit has wrote and directed that. And if it's anything of what you expect from Kit, it's gonna be quite funny, right?
Yeah, I think the martial arts world, especially jiu-jitsu, is ripe for a comedy. That's for sure.
Right. For sure. In terms of jiu-jitsu, there was one movie that came out a couple of years ago, which is one of the only pure jiu-jitsu actual sort of narrative stories to come out. And I've never seen it. It's a Brazilian movie, and it never got a worldwide release. But it is called The Black Belt, The True History of Fernando Terere. And it's came out in 2022, and it's all about his, kind of early life in the favelas of Brazil, his rise to the top as a jiu-jitsu champion, his subsequent decline into drug addiction and everything associated with that. So there's one movie that came out, but unfortunately limited only to the Brazilian audience.
Yeah, I would like to hunt that down. I wonder if it covers his bizarre kind of 2-3 year sojourn in the Welsh valleys.
Good point. Yeah, Terere did spend a long time actually in the UK. Didn't he?
Stayed. I think he lived with Pedro Bessa or something, and was just popping up at every jiu-jitsu gym in the UK, just like, hey, it's me, Terere, the absolute legend of jiu-jitsu. I live here now.
I do wonder why. Like you said, though, there's never been like a Karate Kid for jiu-jitsu. And I think jiu-jitsu has grown so much over the last couple of years that it's kind of amazing that nobody's picked up on that idea, because I feel like one of the biggest drivers for martial arts popularity in the 70s, 80s was the endless stream of like easily accessible media that inspired people to walk into martial arts gyms. We just don't have that in jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah, true. Just so you know, on my pile of unfinished creative projects, I do actually have a little story idea about that. It's a Karate Kid for the jiu-jitsu world, but it's sat under a pile of about 7 other unfinished bits of writing. So, but I don't know. I guess the landscape has changed a little bit. Like, I feel like martial arts had a lot of mysticism back in the day, and that probably lent itself very well to films. And now everything is a bit more pragmatic and has lost a little bit of its kind of mystery. So maybe that's why it's less attractive. And then I don't know, it feels like Hollywood in general has got no fucking imagination at the moment. So
that is true. Yeah, unless it's like an already established IP, intellectual property. It seems like original movies aren't really given much of a shot these days. I steered way clear of the Karate Kid remakes, by the way. I assume you did as well. Yeah, I also feel like it's not really aimed at me nowadays, is it? So I'd rather hang on to the nostalgia of the originals. Yeah. But I do wonder if jiu-jitsu just doesn't lend itself to cinema, because, it visually, there's a lot of things going on in jiu-jitsu that you can't see. You can only feel. And if you're not really that understanding or educated about the art, and it probably doesn't translate itself well to what goes on camera. But
yeah, but it's just a vehicle, isn't it? Because like Karate Kid was the goofiest shit ever, the crane kick that no one's ever used. It was just using it to tell a story, wasn't it? I reckon the drama of jiu-jitsu, like, the thousands of people screaming, the tournament victories and losses, I think is enough to pin. If you have a good story, I reckon you could do it. Yeah,
I agree. I'd love to see it, actually. I really would. I kind of want to make a couple of honorable mentions to martial arts movies that I enjoyed. They were not really traditional martial arts movies, but they kind of took the genre and they did like a nice little original kind of take on it. It was a different spin. And one of them that you may not seen is the delightfully weird Riley Stearns movie, The Art of Self-Defense. Have you seen that one?
I'd never even heard of it. I'm just looking at it now.
Wow. Okay. Well, I 100% recommend you check this movie out because it's really good. It is very, very dark. It's very, very unusual. It stars Jesse Eisenberg and Imogen Poots, two really, really good actors. And it's a very surreal and very dark tale that is ostensibly about karate. There's this, quite wimpy, nerdy office worker who, decides to sign up to a martial arts gym, which actually turns out to have a really kind of dark side to it. But there are some really sly references to jiu-jitsu slipped in. And anybody with martial arts experience will kind of spot the connection because Riley Stearns is actually a jiu-jitsu black belt. And Riley is a legit jiu-jitsu black belt as well as a really good movie director. So The Art of Self-Defense, it has some incredibly darkly funny moments in it. Really, really dark movie, but definitely worth checking out.
I'll put it on my list.
Yeah, not a martial arts movie as such, but some great moments. And another one, again, not sure if you ever saw this one, it's quite an obscure movie, but Danny McBride, who is best known for his role as Kenny Powers in Eastbound and Down, and he's another guy who seems to play the same character in every movie and TV show that he's in.
Yeah, even in Prometheus for some bizarre reason. Covenant, yeah.
He was in a movie that came out way back in 2006 called The Foot Fist Way. And this is such a random movie that it's about Taekwondo. But again, it's obviously written by somebody who really understands the martial arts world and culture, because there are some great references in that to sort of the dojo hierarchies and the rivalries between teams and stuff that only somebody within that world would really get it. And they did a good job of communicating that, but in a quite a, sort of very extroverted, funny comedy. So
that film is hilarious. I need to go back and rewatch that. I remember crying with laughter at the ending. I can't remember. He goes on some sort of weird rant, and it just killed me. Yeah, I love Danny McBride. He's so funny.
He is very good. He's very good. But then we were talking about jiu-jitsu, and you mentioned earlier about how while we don't have the movies, we did have a string of really, really good documentaries that came out over a period of time, mostly featured around sort of the Gracie family, because these are obviously some of the most prominent guys in the sport. But I think we have to start talking about sort of the seminal, the jiu-jitsu documentary that really kicked it off for everybody. And I think the one that everybody thinks about when they think of a jiu-jitsu documentary has to be Choke, the Hicks and Gracie documentary, right?
Yeah, I think Choke has the most recognition among sort of martial artists and non-martial artists. So like, it's a really good documentary, really good, because it has a little plot, which is I believe is it the first Vale Tudo Japan or the second?
I think it was the second, actually. But Vale Tudo Japan,
and there's a little narrative there, like, is Hickson the favorite going to win? And then there's a lot of good characters in there. I think if I remember, there's a couple of American guys that are quite sort of interesting characters. And then you've got Yuki Nakai, the plucky little Japanese guy who's like the lightest guy in the tournament, getting to the finals and getting his eyes gouged out on the way there. And then seeing all of the kind of interactions between Hickson and his family is really nice. And I guess how far ahead he was, or not ahead, but like what a unique character he was back in those times. He is like a comic book character. He's like meditating in the mountains. He's swimming in the freezing cold Japanese lakes. He's doing breathing meditations,
doing yoga on the beach.
And then at the same time, he's flying to Tokyo to fight people for money and fucking caning all of them. It's like, that is a legit comic book character. It's unreal how cool that was back then.
Yeah. For me, Rickson Gracie joke is still like the seminal jiu-jitsu documentary. The one that it was the first, the best, and even still today, it holds up. It's just such an amazing piece of filmmaking, centered on, like you say, a very specific kind of point in time, and just does such a good job of kind of bringing in all these secondary characters to kind of support the story, but at the same time giving you amazing access to Rickson's world. It really was phenomenal. And then there are a series of other documentaries that came out in kind of the following years. And just to roll a couple of them off quickly, there was the excellent Mario Sperry, Day of the Zen, that came out in 2002. There was Renzo Gracie Legacy that came out in 2008. There was the Roger Gracie documentary called Tradition, The Rise of a Gracie Family, that Gracie fighter, that came out in 2015. And then 2017 had The Gracies and the Birth of Valetudo. So a lot of Gracie movies out there, not so many about other people.
No, I mean, they're good self-marketers. I'm trying to figure out, I can't actually remember what goes on in the Day of Zen with Mario Sperry. I've definitely watched it, but it's been a long time.
I remember snippets from it for sure. I remember it showed them training at the sort of the original BTT location. It showed them working with like wrestling coach Daryl Gola. It really is like a day in the life almost of, I'm sure it was filmed over multiple days, but it kind of gives you an idea about this high profile heavyweight MMA fighter from Brazil who, was one of the best of his generation, but was not like the best guy in the world. But it did a really good job of just taking you into sort of the behind the scenes and into the life of an MMA fighter for what was at the time for me like a very exotic location. Rio de Janeiro was on the other side of the world. It was where all the best fighters came from. So I just remember really clearly that it was like this a whole new world that had been opened to me, and I thought that was one of the really coolest things about it at the time.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I remember seeing a lot of Brazil there and being very kind of intrigued by that environment.
There were also a number of really important movies, I think, influenced like a certain generation within jiu-jitsu as well. They weren't technically documentaries, but they took us inside the gyms in a way kind of before the internet existed. And these were videos like Art Suave and the on the mat videos like Dengue Fever and Scar Tissue and stuff. I think these weren't the traditional narrative documentaries, but they served the same purpose, right?
Back in the early days of Scramble, when I used to bring the DVD magazines in from Japan, they would, I guess they must have licensed it all properly, but sometimes the DVDs would have mini features, and I guess they got hold of the license to Art Suave because we had Art Suave 1 and 2. And I remember, I guess it's a bit like skate videos, like that whole thing of it's just feeding a kind of hungry subculture. Here's all the people that you know or need to know about doing their thing. Here's a quick interview with them. Here's them like goofing around. I remember Janji Hibero teaching his sweep, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, it's like the most basic flower sweep." But 20 years ago, it was revolutionary. And
I still know people who call that the Shanji sweep, by the way.
Yeah, definitely, it's stuck. There was a young kid. He grew up to be a bit of a Ari Farias.
Ari Farias. Yes, Farias. And he was like about 12 or 13 years old, and he was training with Jacare in Manaus.
Jacare climbing all over him. Yeah. So that stuff is really cool. I think anyone who's into jiu-jitsu, you should go back and hunt those things down.
And I think you're right about the kind of comparison to like the skate videos that were kind of popping up around that time as well. Like you said, like sort of independently produced media that really served a subculture, because jiu-jitsu was far from mainstream back in those days. And sort of as video production technology and DVD production technology became more accessible, even before the internet made it even more accessible. And this was kind of the way that some of us actually, it was our only look into that world, right?
Yeah, it was very low budget, very everything was just very real. I just remember Jacare driving around in like a grungy old pickup with like no t-shirt on muddy roads in the jungle, and going to sort of just gyms. Just everything was very down to earth and real, and kind of quite different to how it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those inspired me a lot, actually. Those kind of video magazine styles documentaries. I came up sort of watching those skate and snowboarding videos that came out around the same kind of time as well, and I just thought that was the perfect way to kind of serve the subculture, like you say, and it inspired me a lot when I started making my videos with BJJ hacks. But there are a couple of modern documentaries about jiu-jitsu that came out sort of in the last 10 years. There was the excellent videos made by Dan Lewis of Eat Films, who Dan seemed to come out of nowhere, make two excellent documentaries, Roll, Jiu-Jitsu in SoCal, and Jiu-Jitsu versus the World. Made those in 2015 and 2016, and never made another Jiu-Jitsu movie ever again. Just boom, dropped those two really good documentaries and then disappeared, which is awesome.
Yeah. No, I should rewatch those as well. I wonder what he's doing now.
Teaching Jiu-Jitsu in Teesside, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Stealth Jiu-Jitsu, yeah. But yeah, those were like just incredible movies that have millions of views. And then I think about things like the Daisy Fresh series as well. That was quite an important documentary series that came out in recent years that I felt did a good job of taking people again into a sort of an undiscovered part of the jiu-jitsu landscape, and taking you into a world that you would otherwise would never go. And obviously the kind of the effect that it had for the Pedigo submission fighting team as well has been absolutely incredible, right?
Yeah, I think Flow had kind of a history of making decent documentaries in wrestling, and I think they applied that to jiu-jitsu when they added that vertical. Yeah, they were good. Yeah,
Flow used to have an entire documentary production department that has since been scrapped. So I'm not sure we'll actually see any more documentary series coming out of Flow like that, which is a shame, because I just think about how important the Daisy Fresh series was. It literally changed some people's lives. So it's a shame that there won't be that opportunity anymore.
Maybe they'll do it on more of an ad hoc basis rather than kind of churning them out.
In the works. When I was in Dubai back in October for the quintet, I ran into Henzo and we were chatting, and he told me that there is this multiple part documentary series that is being produced. I think it's literally just it's either called Gracie or Gracie's, but this documentary series is kind of being worked on at the moment. They've done a ton of filming for it over the last couple of years. It seems like each episode will feature a different member of the family. So we're talking guys like Hickson, Horian, Henzo, guys like that. And very interesting, he told me that the budget for the series was almost the same as the Michael Jordan documentary series, The Last Dance, which is really interesting to me.
Is this a Netflix thing or like a privately commissioned? Oh, I guess maybe they'll make it and try and sell it or something.
Yeah, I don't think it was commissioned by Netflix. I couldn't tell you exactly who the production company is behind it, but unfortunately, the last I've heard, that production has kind of been shelved for a little bit, and I'm not sure why or what the delay is. But I do know that some big names were attached to it, like Guy Ritchie had a kind of a producer credit on the series and stuff. So I'm really curious to see what comes of this, because it sounds to me like it's going to be very, very interesting. And Henzo was saying, they filmed with everybody, you name it. Dana White's in it, Joe Rogan's in it, all the big names in the sport. So I would like to know what the status of that is, but it seems like it might be stuck in development hell, like they call it, right?
I would love to watch a very like a high budget, well produced kind of modern documentary on the Gracies and jiu-jitsu. Yeah, but make a change from like serial killer stuff, I guess.
For sure. And then there is one documentary as well, which I know has been worked on for absolutely years and years and years. And uh, still, again, not sure of the exact status of it. I get different answers every time I ask. But Bobby Razak, who has been kind of in the MMA and grappling community for many, many years, a filmmaker. He's based in Los Angeles, but he's British. And he's been working on a documentary about ADCC, and he's been working on it for over a decade at this point. And I saw a rough cut of this movie in a private screening in Abu Dhabi way back in, I think it was 2017. Now, it was really cool because it had some absolutely incredible unseen footage that I've never seen before or since. It's obviously come from like the private collection of the Sheikh and stuff like that. And it really is all about the early days of the ADCC and about the Sheikh going to America, about how he learned jiu-jitsu, about how he took it back. They reunited the original crew of guys who were the first to go to Abu Dhabi to teach and train jiu-jitsu at the original Abu Dhabi Combat Club. And it is a fascinating story. And I know it's being worked on by Bobby. It's got Mohammed Al Hosseini, who is a very important figure in the UAE. He is a UFC commentator. He is a historian. He is a matchmaker in grappling organization. So those two are involved in it. I'm just not sure exactly what the status is, because first I was told it's going to be a movie. Then I was told it's going to be like a 10-part series. Then I was told it's going to be a movie. Then it's going to be a 4-part series. So not sure on the exact status, but I feel like a real bona fide history of ADCC would be cool, right?
Yeah, I remember him. I follow him on Instagram, but I haven't seen anything. You know, you mentioning his name is the first time I've thought about him in years, but he did share one or two little teasers, and I thought, oh, that looks cool. But yeah, completely forgot about it. Do you remember opening the closed guard, Drysdale, the book? And then he was also making a big deal about the documentary that was coming out. I do remember that at the time he was thanking all the members of ACB on every post, and I think those guys were heavily involved in the fund. This is just my guess. They were heavily involved in the funding, and then I think they fell out of love a little bit with jiu-jitsu. I remember the owner of ACB, or the pro side of the show, going, I'm not fucking paying you guys all this money if you're going to come over here and do boring ass fights, which was very interesting. And I agreed with him. But anyway, then suddenly the project seemed to kind of stop. I don't know if you have any insight there.
I do, because I had a number of meetings with Robert about this, and he gave me kind of the inside scoop. And I'm not sharing anything secret here. This is kind of also kind of out there. But you're right, Robert, he did indeed have this Open and Closed Guard, which was the book that he wrote after interviewing many kind of old school figures from the very early days of history of jiu-jitsu in Brazil, in an effort to kind of combat the disinformation and the myths that exist in jiu-jitsu. And he was really looking to tell the sort of the untold and what, in his opinion, was the true history of jiu-jitsu and how it came to Brazil and how it was taught and how it was developed. And quite controversial because it challenged a lot of the kind of stories that have been told and retold by the Gracie family and other people connected to them. So it definitely ruffled some feathers. But he did travel around a lot in Brazil, and even went to Japan and filmed a series of interviews with some old school figures. And the idea was to make this documentary. And I know that he received at least $100,000 in funding from the guys in Chechnya. This is a long time ago now. I'm talking like 2016, 2017 that he received this money. And as I can attest, and as many people have found out, that making a documentary is not as simple as people expect. And what happened was that he has basically hit a point where the jigsaw pieces just don't seem to fit, I guess. And the movie has been stuck in production limbo for a very long time. And I guess, I'm not sure whether we'll ever see it, to be honest. I mean, I'm sure he's got the intention to make it. I'm sure he's got the intention to release it. But it is a lot harder than people think to make documentaries, like I say, as I can attest.
Yeah, I believe it. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Of course, yeah, because unfortunately, one of the things that my name is attached to in is of course the Red Belts documentary project, and I had the very similar idea to Robert in that when I was in Brazil and I was living there in the first couple of years, I met a number of old school guys, and I had this idea that wow, somebody needs to record some history with these guys. Somebody needs to get their stories on camera before it's too late, because they definitely represented an era of jiu-jitsu that I knew very little about and that seemed to have been forgotten about in the annals of jiu-jitsu history. Because the story of from Carlos Gracie Sr. learning jiu-jitsu from Count Koma up until sort of Elio's retirement in the 50s, that's one part of jiu-jitsu history that people know a lot about. And then Horian starting the UFC and the Gracies going to America, and then from the UFC on, everybody seems to know about that part of jiu-jitsu history. But that's leaves a 30-year gap in the middle where really nobody seems to know much about, from sort of the mid-50s up until sort of the late 70s, early 80s. 3 decades of jiu-jitsu history when a lot of development and a lot of evolution took place that really laid the groundwork for then the modern era. And these gentlemen that I met, the Grandmasters, that's their kind of era, but they aren't Gracies. And I guess they don't necessarily have the same name recognition or the same pull as the sort of the families do. And unfortunately, they kind of got a little bit brushed to the side and their stories were overlooked and forgotten about. And my idea was very naive, was I thought, I can just make a documentary about these guys. So I started the fundraising product on Indiegogo, which is a kind of a Kickstarter kind of thing, a crowdfunding model. And I raised about, I think it was just over $17,000 through the community to start this project, and immediately discovered that is considered a micro budget in documentary making. And like I say, Robert Drysdale got over $100,000 in funding to put this project together. He couldn't get his completed. I certainly found out that $17,000 doesn't go a long way when you're talking about any kind of media production. And actually, having since worked in jiu-jitsu companies like Flow, I mean, they literally spent 5, 6, 7 times that on just making 1 or 2 episodes of the Daisy Fresh series. So it kind of puts things into perspective. But long story short, was I filmed a bunch of stuff with the Red Belts, and I just have never really been, like I used that analogy earlier, I've never really been able to get those jigsaw pieces to fit, to kind of paint the full picture of that time, because there were a lot of very difficult interviews, and I found out that this Grandmaster absolutely hates this guy and he won't talk about him. And then this guy's talking shit about that guy and contradicting everything that he said. So it became very, very complicated project to try and distill and to try and tell the story. And yeah, I'm not sure if I'm ever going to be able to put that into a cohesive piece, to be honest with you.
Didn't you have some technical problems as well? There was you had to translate stuff. I think you lost some drives or something, and
yeah, there was a hard drive failure, and that cost me a couple of thousand to recover all the data that was on a lost hard drive. That wasn't much fun. Spent thousands on things like translations and fixers and producers and stuff like that. Travel, trying to bring these guys in from different cities to Rio de Janeiro, travel to other cities as well to film with these guys. It didn't last long, the money. I ended up funding kind of a good chunk of the production myself, just because that money had already gone. And that's also not ignoring the fact that the 17,000 that was raised, the actual platform took a big chunk of that in kind of processing fees, and so it didn't leave me anywhere near $17,000 to actually make this with. But the sad thing was every penny of it went into the production, but there were just a lot of people who like to talk shit, and they were saying about things like how I spent the money on my wedding and stuff like that, which is just really completely untrue. So it was it's unfortunate that the Red Belts project has unfortunately, it's really affected my reputation in the community for years. And there are some people who are very vocal about it. There are others who are more understanding, but it's disappointing that I look at it like this. I look at it as almost like a startup business that failed. That I had this great intention and I had the seed money and I did my best to try and get this business model kind of up and running, and it just didn't work. And I've had to carry that around ever since, because really the thing that people were most upset about was that I borrowed the money, or I was donated the money from people to make it happen, and then I never delivered on the promise. So it's
I mean, just
really
to play devil's advocate, I can see if somebody contributed and then they never got to see the finished product, I guess they would have a legitimate grievance, but it also just doesn't take into account quite how difficult it is to complete a project like that. And it's either deliver the finished product, or unfortunately the money, didn't do what it was supposed to do. So it left some people disappointed. But like when we talk about it now, I realize, what a tiny budget that is to produce something. It's crazy. Like, you think you can just fly somewhere and stick a camera in someone's face, and it's really, really not the case. I mean, we know that from Polaris now, like hiring freelancers or travel or editing time, everything is expensive. So I'm not surprised you didn't manage to pull it off, to be honest.
Yeah, with what I had and also just the lack of experience as well. I was just totally naive and in thinking that I could take on a project of that scale at that time as well. And alone as well, not really doing it with a team or anything as well. It was very naive of me to think that it was possible. But who knows? The footage is triple backed up. It still exists. So maybe I'll just try and get something out to appease people. And even if it's shit and they think it's no good, well, at least I delivered on my promise, right?
I think it could be worth revisiting. Just raw interviews or something like that. I don't know.
But jiu-jitsu media, I would love to see some narrative jiu-jitsu movies. I would love to see some good jiu-jitsu stories. Sounds like you've got a project in the works. I actually started kind of drafting out like a kind of a script stroke story outline as well for something a few years ago as well.
When we get offline, I'll tell you about it.
Yeah, well, I'm not ashamed to say that mine was heavily inspired by that amazing wrestling movie that came out in the 80s. Do you remember Vision Quest?
No. I know of it, but I haven't watched it.
Dude, it's such a classic movie. That was like one of the only real freestyle wrestling movie or college wrestling movies that came out back in the day. It was in the early 80s. And Matthew Modine plays this up-and-coming wrestler who has to go to a tournament and take on the big bad opponent in the end. And the movie's really notable for one tiny little bit of movie trivia, that it actually features the very first on-screen appearance of a young Madonna. That she's playing like a song in a bar in one of the scenes. So quite random. I think it's from like 1985 or something like that, the movie. It's ancient now.
Damn. Have there been many wrestling movies? I guess pro wrestling has birthed quite a lot, but...
actual wrestling? No, very few.
No, which is weird because that is so culturally embedded in America anyway. One just popped into my head now, Best of the Best. You remember that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I think that was Taekwondo, wasn't it?
Taekwondo, karate. Yeah, Taekwondo, I think. Yeah, it was.
They probably thought it was all the same back in those days anyway.
There were a ton of really iconic, quite terrible, sort of basically B movies, all about martial arts that came in the 80s. And I'm not just talking about the Jean-Claude Van Damme and the, those kind of movies, but there were a ton that came out around that era that inspired a generation of guys to go around kicking things in their house and stuff.
Yeah. You mentioned that. Yeah, it was in the cinema all the time, and then people were signing up for karate or taekwondo or whatever.
Yeah. Kind of feel like we need that in jiu-jitsu. I feel like a couple of jiu-jitsu movies would be really cool.
Someone's got to do it.
Yeah, hopefully somebody will. Well, I guess that's it for today's episode. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. A little bit different, less around the business of jiu-jitsu, no event stuff, although there's a bunch of stuff coming up. This Who's Number One, this UFC BJJ. But nice to talk about something else for a change, right?
Yeah, I'm going to go back and watch some of these classics, I reckon.
Yeah, well, Christmas is coming up, so you should make the family sit down and watch them together, have some bonding time.
Yes.
Well, that's it for episode 12, I believe, of Unknown Pressures. Thank you very much for watching. If it's on YouTube, leave a like, subscribe, comment. If it's on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever else, please drop us a rating and stuff. It's much appreciated, and it helps us make more. And stay tuned. Possibly some announcements for new developments coming in 2026 for the show. And we count on your support to make it happen. But we thank you for watching as always, and we will see you next time.
Awesome.